Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United transfer news this Thursday, the 7th of August, as we talk Baleba price set, we talk Sesko Deal day, we talk Garnacho progressing to Chelsea, we talk Rasmus heading out of the door, and we also talk what happens if we don't get Baleba. I believe there is a strong statement for Manchester United to be made that they have to go and still buy a midfielder. But lots to get into this morning. The live chat is working, which is what it's all about. But we're going to hit straight away with some news coming in. A raft of news, really. But I want to start off with, look, with Sesko. We'll speak about that in a moment. I think with Sesko, we're waiting for Let's Go Sesko, because we're still waiting for Manchester United to finalise a deal. I mean, apparently, according to Plettigol, and I want to start off on Baleba, but according to Plettigol, Newcastle have still got representatives waiting in Leipzig in case we mess it up, which I find absolutely incredible, really. I mean, I don't even have an analogy for that. It's almost like turning up to the wedding of the person that you love, who loves somebody else and is stood at the altar marrying them, and you're just waiting in case that person, chokes or something, like literally chokes, and you walk in and go, "I'm here, I'm not choking." I don't get that, but apparently that's coming in from Plettigol, that Newcastle still have got representatives in Leipzig in the hope that it falls through. I mean, there's an element of sadness to that, I would say. But look, we're going to start off with Baleba, although I've just seen a bit of the news coming from The Guardian that Chelsea are to step up attempts to sign Garnacho from Manchester United. The Argentine is keen on a move and is available for 50, although Chelsea are unwilling to pay that. But that's not where I'm going to start. I'm going to actually start off with the latest around Garnacho. And what was an incredible day yesterday, let's be honest. Not only did we get the verification that Sesko wants Manchester United, we also got this Baleba story that came out, and there's a few bits to sort of pick up on this, and I think the best place to start is probably with what Fabrizio said overnight in relation to Baleba, and it is here. Manchester United believe agreeing terms with Baleba won't be an issue, but the club-to-club deal with Brighton will be very difficult. Brighton do not want to sell. Since day one, Amorim has wanted a midfielder similar to Baleba's profile. He wants intensity in the midfield and sees Baleba as the perfect target. I think that was actually from last night. But there is more on Baleba. Indicator news. I mean, I'm just going to go with this. I said my piece last night. Well done to them. They have had some accurate information. Baleba earns around £12,500 a week, which is, there will be Man United youth players on that. Like that wage is incredibly crap for Premier League standard. £12,500 a week. There will definitely be people in the Championship earning more than that. Definitely more than in the Championship earning more than that. There might even be players in League One earning up. Maybe not with Wrexham and Birmingham now not in there, but that is not a very good wage. So effectively, what it's saying is that although Baleba is open to the move, what Brighton may try and do is offer a new contract to Baleba, because you've got to. If a club like Manchester United comes in for Baleba and you're on £12,500 a week, and Manchester United, who are bigger than Brighton, say, "We want you, but also we will give you £100,000 a week." I mean, it's not far off 10 times your wage. You're going to knock on the door of Brighton and go, "You are playing a little bit of a dictatorship here, because I'm on ridiculous crap money. Man United are valuing me at £80 million. They're going to give me 100 grand a week, and you're saying, no, I'm not for sale." I'm a little bit being taken the piss out here, So Brighton are going to have to do something. And what it's saying is that Brighton are set to offer Baleba a new contract to fend off interest from Manchester United. Brighton are eager to secure his future and would potentially include a release clause for next summer that could be activated. So what they basically do with Baleba is say, "We'll give you, 75 grand a week, or, I don't know what Brighton's wage bracket is, but we'll give you a good wage for a year, and then in a year's time you'll have a release clause and you can go." And that was sort of what Ben Jacobs was saying to us last week when he broke this story about Baleba. It's an interest from Manchester United, but it's a very difficult deal to do, and it's probably one that happens next summer. So that's where we are with Baleba. Obviously, we've expressed an interest. Brighton are saying, "Not unless you've got silly money." and potentially are looking at a new contract. Baleba would be open to a move to Manchester United. I don't know what the price I'm about to come to, don't worry. I don't know why that's breaking news, by the way. With all due respect to Brighton, it's not really something that motivates me as a Man United fan that Baleba wants to come to Manchester United, because I think any Brighton player would want to come to Manchester United for a whole host of reasons. So that's not the problem. Dealing with Brighton's the problem. Now, the price last night, and I think it was Indicator again, they were saying that Brighton are looking for £90 million plus 10 in add-ons. Now, look, you can take that with a pinch of salt, or you can take it as a reality. Personally, I think that's around the sort of price we're going to have to pay. Now, some people have said if Baleba refuses to sign a new contract and starts to get a little bit, rebellious, that price might come down to 70. But, that would be great. That would be great for Manchester United. But I also look at the way that Sesko's behaved and the way that Gyökeres has behaved. And I look at the way Antony's behaving now and the way he behaved at Ajax. And I just think sometimes a leopard doesn't change its spots. I don't necessarily get on board with the players that start forcing moves. And I know it benefits us in the short term, but I don't know that it benefits us in the long term. We start cheerleading about, Antony's on strike at Ajax because he wants to come to Manchester United. And then, 3 years later, he's effectively on strike because he wants to go to Betis and nowhere else. So I actually quite like and admire the personalities of Harry Maguire, Bruno Fernandes and Sesko, who wanted Manchester United but refused to disrespect Leicester Sporting and Leipzig respectively. They didn't want to behave like that. And I think in the long run, that's something that I would rather have in a Man United player. So I'm not so sure that I want Baleba, going on strike and forcing Brighton's hand. I don't think Brighton have done anything wrong for a start. And I think a lot of Man United fans are like that, like myself, where, we are a big club, but I do think football should be, conducted in the right way. And I don't really want Baleba on strike forcing the price down, because Brighton found Baleba and they should profit from it. So I think that for me, as I said last night, am I as confident this morning as I was last night? Maybe I've come down to 50-50, to be fair, because, you get lost in the moment. But I still would stand by what I said last night. I think when you've got people like Ornstein and Romano reporting that we've been in talks with Baleba, I sort of look at it and I go, what's the end game then? What's the point in that being out there if we're not going to do something with it? And as with Sesko and Ornstein a week ago, we ended up signing Sesko. And I believe there is a pathway, because Brighton will always do a deal. The player will want to come, and we obviously want him. And the interesting stuff as well is that Amrim really wants this player. It's like option A. This is plan A. And I think it will happen. And I think the way it happens is probably more around £80 million and more around installments and more around, incentivized add-ons. I think it can happen. And I think as long as we walk into that as fans, open-eyed, so to speak, then I think we can do this deal. I don't really get it when I see people go, we're not paying 80. Let's get the price down to 60. Let's get the price down to 70. Because I sort of go, well, they sold Caicedo for 100. Declan Rice went for 100. Are we saying that Baleba's not as good as Caicedo or Rice? Well, he may not be at the moment, but I certainly think when you look at Caicedo at Brighton, there's not a hell of a lot of difference. So I think we can pay the price. I think we should pay the price. I obviously, rivals and certain United fans might get moody about that, but I think that we're entering a race where we probably should and will pay the price. And I think that'll be around £80 million. I really do. So, look, I remain confident, but I don't want to hear about Baleba going on strike to force the price down or anything like that. I'd much rather be buying players like Mbeumo, who respected Brighton, like Cunha, who respected Wolves. And we've spoken about the personality. And I think there's a big lesson with plenty of United players, and Antony included, where, we champion them going on strike to come to United, and then a couple of years later they're treating United like shit. I mean, I can't remember I can't remember how Sancho behaved at Dortmund, but he certainly hasn't behaved that well at Manchester United, has he? And Garnacho's not behaving well, and Antony's not behaving well, and some people think Rashford didn't behave well. It is about how you conduct yourself on and off the pitch, and I do believe that Baleba, we want him to be the personality that we're trying to bring into the football club, which is really important. I want to get into your comments as well, but I do just want to say this about Baleba. I think this is really important. If we are going for Baleba, and it looks like we are, and we do not get Baleba, we have to get a plan B. I think that would be absolutely criminal to go for a player publicly, like we have done again. When Ornstein and Romano report it, it's public. We know Amrim wants Baleba. We know we've spoken to Brighton about Baleba. We can't wait 12 months. Like 12 months can sack a manager. It would be very disappointing not to get plan A, but you have to go and get plan B. You're talking about a player that after Sesko, we're going to spend 70, 80, 90 million pounds on. So we've obviously got the money. And if we don't get Baleba, we have to go and get somebody else, because people can say, well, wait 12 months. When does football stand still? When can we afford to write seasons off? That midfield is a problem. If you can't get plan A, you can't then go, oh, we tried. Like, you've absolutely publicised to the whole fan base that Amrim isn't happy with the midfield and Amrim wants a player like Baleba. So if you don't get it and you go, well, we tried, we all know that Amrim hasn't been given what he wanted, that he knows there's a weakness there, and we're going into a season without it. So it would be disappointing not to get plan A, but there would have to be a plan B. And I think that's something to consider. Maybe not immediately, because we're still in on plan A, and I believe there's a very good chance we can still do that deal. But if we don't do the deal, we can't just go, oh, well, we tried. There has to be a plan B, because the midfield is a huge issue. And the club and Amrim have publicly put it out there that we do want a midfielder. So there has to be a midfielder. We can't go into this season with the midfield as it is. And I think that's really important as well. And it's also exciting, because I'm not saying that the club won't do that. I think we'll probably get Baleba, fingers crossed. But if we don't, I think they will go for somebody else, because we have to. Because if you wait for Baleba next year and we have a bad season because of the midfield, and we finish 7th and Baleba's available, then maybe Chelsea go for him, maybe Man City go for him, and we don't get him anyway. So I think this is a one-shot lottery. You get him or you go for somebody else. That's my opinion on it, because I want this player, and you always do want plan A. But if we don't get him, we can't just ignore it for a year and gamble on the fact that we can get him in a year's time. So hence, going back to what I said, that's why the outlay's worth it. Because if United are humming and ahhing going, if we give Brighton £80 million across 5 years, they'll give him to us. Can we quite afford it? And I would go, with a player like that in your midfield, you solve your midfield problem, you finish higher in the league, you maybe get Champions League football, and the money comes back. You don't get him, you wait a year, you're not in Europe, and he goes somewhere else, you've just lost a shitload of money. So you have to look at it in that sense, in my opinion. And I certainly think, hopefully, Manchester United will look at it in that sense as well. Emily Derry says, this approach for Baleba is high stakes on reputation for Vival, Wilcox and the board. The alternatives then have to be of similar profile and quality. Carlos says, if we get rid of the so-called bomb squad, we save about 35 million per season. Thank you, Carlos, for your super chat. We should go for Yulman as a backup if Baleba doesn't work or not progress. I mean, I think that is a good shout, Exo. Some people have mentioned Wharton, who I think would be as difficult as a young English player at a club that doesn't want to sell him. So I think Yulman would be the one to go for. He's a little bit older. I mean, the price profile of Baleba as well. People won't like me saying this, but, there is a lot of similarities between the way Manchester United want to work and the way Chelsea work. You look at Sesko, 22. You look at Baleba, 22. All right, Cunha and Mbeumo are both 25. They're slightly older, and maybe Chelsea wouldn't do that. But I think we are looking at still players under 26, and Baleba would be good. Bounty Hunter says, watched Sesko highlights, powerful striker, good stuff. Talk about Sesko in a minute. Feels good to feel like Amrim is being back, says Keel. I don't know how the future looks, but for the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to the new season, says Tristan. Yes and no. Yes and no. I think ultimately, if I was being real, we have bought 2 players and sold nobody. In a week's time, we probably still won't have bought them. We'll have Sesko. The season starts a week on Sunday. We bought 2 players and we sold nobody. That's the reality. The also reality is we could have a £90 million midfielder and a 70 million striker, coming in the next few weeks. So I understand your excitement, but ultimately there's still things that need to be done. We will get him, but I would have sold Bruno, says Reflex D. Glenn C says, what would worry me if we wait is the top four, even if it looks like they don't need him. They all seem to think nothing of accumulating super teams, says Glenn C. And I think this is a great point from Glenn as well. I mentioned this last night, whether it was by design or not. Going for Baleba late in the window is a masterstroke if you pull it off, because Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City and Arsenal have spent all their money. They haven't got the money to go and get Baleba. But I think, like you say, next summer they would, and they might even go for him, even though they don't need him in the first team, because they're building super squads. So, yeah, I agree. I don't think you can wait till next season. You've got to pounce now, definitely. For Baleba, it's about timing for any club. This season, United might be in a one-horse race. Next season, no chance, says Aki. Exactly. Fraz says, I'm too Sesko. Now it's you made me a Baleba. You made me and you made me a believer. Imagine Dragons. I can just hear the chant, says Akshay. I know it's very, very difficult, but is it the Imagine Dragons that people say the lead singer looks like me? Probably not anymore. I fell off a little bit looks wise, but there we go. I know it's very, very difficult, but should we be top at Christmas? Would you start believing in the title? Thomas, I will let it go once. If you do it again, I will have to direct you off to talk shit or something like that, because that sort of rubbish we don't want on this channel. We do not want that type of rubbish on here. Harry Sinclair says, look, I'd love to be top at Christmas, but it's not even in my brain. You know, we've got to be real, and I'd be very, very, very happy with 5th place this season. Hi, Mark. Just a quick Google. Callum Chambers is playing for Cardiff in League One and is on 45 grand a week. So, yes, his wages are low. Thank you, Harry Sinclair. It's Brighton. Of course they want to sell, says Josh. And Hexo says, Gigi, Ahmad, Dorgu, Yoro, Delit, Heaven, Baleba, Bruno, Cunha, and Burmo, Sesko. Let's go. He's picked a team, Hex. Same thing Brighton did with McAllister, says JR. Are you a Baleba, says Peter. Look, I was an early jumper onto Baleba. You know, that's the great thing about that football, is we get to watch a lot of different games. And, you know, I've liked Baleba for a long time. And I think it was very obvious he was going to be the next Basuma, Casido. I mean, I'd almost be, you know what? I'd love to get a spy in at Brighton at the moment and go, if we sell Baleba, who are we going to go for? Can I have a look at the computer system? And they go, we're going for this player, and then buy him instead. Can't excuse that wage for such a player, says Chip. Would this be our greatest ever transfer window, says Weg? Mate, I'm not talking about it, because it's got to, you discuss a transfer window at the end of the window. But I would say Cunha and Burmo, Sesko, Baleba and a goalkeeper would be a very good transfer window. You've still got to look at prices and timings and etc., but it would be a very good window, yes. How Baleba fits with new signings, bench and Burmo, says Antonio. What? What's he talking about? Baleba benches and Burmo. Mate, you do realise that Burmo is an attacker and Baleba is a midfielder. That's like saying, does Maguire bench an Arna? Which he probably should, but yeah. Do you think we should look at ter Stegen, says Max? We aren't looking at ter Stegen at the moment. Whether we should look at ter Stegen or not, we'll have to see. Newcastle fans coping has made my week. Banter here has more silverware than their entire history. Levels to the game, says Huge. Thank you very much. Do you think Brighton would want Collier? Collier was already at Brighton, wasn't he? We got Collier from their youth system. I think he was the captain of their youth team, or England. Look, Collier's got a lot of potential, and you know, Brighton might be a good fit for him. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're going to talk about outgoings in a moment. Could Ederson still be a plan, says Alex? No. Oh, well. I mean, he could. I don't think Atalanta want to sell. I'll be honest. Like, I do like Ederson at Atalanta, but Baleba would be, like, I think there's 3 midfielders that I would go really interesting. Baleba would be number 1, Yulmland would be number 2, Wharton would be number 3. They're really sort of plan A types of signings. I do like Ederson, but you know, Serie A and systematically, I don't know. But look, we could look at that. We could do. The meltdown of many in the media because Sesko chose Man United over Newcastle is appalling. Just shows how many have grown their careers by hating on United, as Michael speaks. Mate, we've got Man United fans who do that. You know, they're hammering him out. They're just waiting to go, you know. Alan says, do you think they're smoke screening another deal with this? No. And look, this is really, really important. Somebody said this last night, spin. It's spin. You know, everybody's in a positive mood about Sesko. The 58 are talking about protests. Last time they spoke about protests or did a protest, there was a new stadium pictures coming out from ChatGPT. Protests come out, we're going for Baleba that night. So some people are saying it's spin. They're saying, look, we're just going for a player we know Brighton won't sell, but it makes us look ambitious. It makes us look like we're trying to do something. And in a way, I you know, look, obviously, I can acknowledge the source in the sense that if you want to believe Man United are playing a game, then, and you want to spin a positive story, then it's a bit like giving a current player a new contract and saying it's a new signing. If I go to Brighton and say, we want Baleba and we're leaking it, and Brighton go, well, that's fine because he's not for sale, then you're in this situation where everyone's going, oh, we're serious, we're a proper football club again. But I genuinely think we are in for Baleba. So I don't think it's spin. But that's why I say, if we can't get him, we can't walk away from that and go, we're not getting anyone, because then people quite rightly will say it was bullshit, it was spin. I think that in going for Baleba, you expose the fact that the midfield's not good enough. You expose the facts that Amrin wants a midfielder, and therefore you can't go into the season without one, whether you can get Baleba or not. So I think the proof will be in the pudding that we will get Baleba or we will go for somebody else, which is what we have to do now. So I don't think it's spin, no. Without Bruno, we would have been relegated, says Luke. Thank you. Do you think Jackson will go to Newcastle, says Maliki? I mean, I don't think they deserve that, but it could happen. Will Sesko have a pre-season after we sign him? Same for the other players when we do get them eventually, says P-Dog. He's had a pre-season with Leipzig. He just didn't play their last game, but he has had a pre-season, and Burmo didn't really have one. So he has had a pre-season. It's a bit like De Ligt and Mazraoui. They did have a pre-season with Munich. They just didn't join us until a couple of days before the first game of the season. But they won't have had a pre-season in the sense of getting used to the Amrin system, which is a good point. So you have to allow that. It's something the media and the haters won't do. But if Sesko comes into the team, he won't have had that weeks working with the team, etc. Mainu Agate, Baleba is the future. Sell Bruno and let Casemiro leave to bring down the wage bill, says Shane. Brighton has only sold players worth of 1.6 million this year. Maybe they might consider selling, says Z. Does doing for Baleba mean Bruno is not a shoo-in, says Tech? Well, they have sold João Pedro, Z. Straight away, I'm not a Brighton fan, but I literally just went, they've sold João Pedro for 50 million. So they have sold João Pedro. How long before Jim will replace players with AI, says Dawid. Rock, welcome to the members club. What if we loan them Kone, says Alfie. I mean, I'd do that. I'd do that. I'd loan them Kone and give them Collier. I mean, I don't know whether it brings the price down much at all, though, really. They're still going to want the money. We could include Mainu, says the two pump. I don't think we're going to do that. This approach for Baleba is high stakes on reputation for Vavell, Wilcox and the board. The alternatives then have to be of a similar profile and quality, says Emily Derry. And Carlos says, if we get rid of the so-called... We've done that one. Okay, right, let me go back to the news. Rohit says, I think United will get Baleba because they know it's not an easy deal. It's a single shot deal and he won't be available next year. Otherwise, United would not have approached. I'm with you, Rohit. I really do think it will happen. And I would add to that by saying, if we don't do this deal now, and in a year's time he goes to Liverpool and he's brilliant, it's the stick that Ineos will be beat with. And I hope they understand that. It's a warning, really. If you don't do this deal now, then you will be hit with it when he goes somewhere else and he's really good. And the reason for that is people will say, you can't walk away from it because Brighton want 80 million. By actually, and this is my point, by approaching Brighton publicly through Ornstein, you can't approach them and then go, oh, we didn't realise it was that much. They literally sell midfielders for 100 million. So for us to go into it, we know what we've got to pay. And I think it will be about getting it done. Wouldn't it be better to get a goalkeeper first before we get a midfielder? I get we need both, but shouldn't we prioritise a goalkeeper, says Fraz? Not really. We do need a goalkeeper, but if you've seen the midfield, it's a problem. And games are won and lost in the midfield. Are we losing focus on realistic midfield targets, says Tilak? And how is Luna not the obvious choice for goalkeeper, says David? Amas and Collier plus 60 million for Baleba. Let's dream, says Aki. Did we not get Amas from Brighton as well? Martini says, I have a feeling Brighton anticipate big players will leave, so they'll scout someone before they leave. 100%. 100%. They work really well, Martini. Right, anyway, we've spoken about Baleba. I want to talk about Sesko for a moment, because that is still very much not done. And there was a very interesting update on Sesko that came in today from Plettenberg, Florian Plettenberg, Plettigol. Listen to this. Showdown in Leipzig today. Newcastle, like Manchester United, still have representatives out on site in Leipzig ready to react in case Manchester United cannot reach an agreement with Leipzig. However, the Red Devils are going all in, especially because Sesko is now clearly committed. He wants to join Manchester United. Personal terms are 100% agreed. Fabrizio said this morning as well that that today was hopefully going to be the day where Manchester United can pick up the deal and get it over the line. I mean, look, I'm not panicking. And an interesting stat as well that came in from Jan Argefjortov. Christopher Vivell would complete a remarkable hat-trick if he gets Sesko to Manchester United, considering he took Sesko to Salzburg in 2019. He took him to Leipzig in 2023, and now he looks like taking him to Manchester United at in 2025. So he's been involved in Sesko's last 3 deals, which is quite incredible, really. But look, I genuinely think at some point today we will get. Here we go. I mean, I was hoping we're going to get it yesterday, and we mustn't ever just say it's definitely going to happen today, because as we know with these things, sometimes official announcements can take bloody weeks. Remember Varane and Ederson. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get a here we go today, of course. But what I would say is that I was hoping fly today, Carrington medical tomorrow for the opening of Carrington, and then on the pitch, Fiorentina, here I am. As somebody quite rightly said yesterday, the third kit comes out on the 12th, which is next Tuesday. So they might put it back to that if we run out of a little bit of time. Look, ultimately, we might be jumping the gun a little bit, because it is Manchester United, and we haven't actually got a great track record for moving quickly on deals. So although we're close to doing a deal with Leipzig, let's not forget Leipzig have accepted Newcastle's deal, and they'll want us to be close to that. So we're probably negotiating, and it will be, I think the gap between Man United and Newcastle's bid is only a few million. It's like maybe 2, 3, 4 million. But we're negotiating on it. So it could still take a little bit of time. I mean, hopefully we're going to get it today at some point, but it could still take a bit of time. And United, look, if I was Ruben Amorim, I'd be saying, come on, like, we're playing Arsenal a week on Sunday. I'd like to be starting him in that game. And every day we take from here makes it really difficult. I mean, if he can get a week of training, I can probably start him. You know, if he's training at Carrington on Monday, I can probably start him. But if he's not being unveiled until Tuesday and his first training session's not till Wednesday, I probably can't start him. So, look, maybe he can. I don't know. But look, I'm not. The big thing is people are saying, "Are you concerned about the Newcastle representatives being there?" This would be the biggest fumble in, since buying. Well, I'm not going to take the piss out of other people, but it would be the biggest fumble since Newcastle. No, I think that it would be shocking if United didn't get Sesko now, considering he wants us, we want him, and we've just got to figure out a deal. We're not going to walk away. I don't actually know why Newcastle representatives would be there. I mean, that's the surprising thing for me. I just don't know why you would be there. It's surely a big, massive waste of time. But yeah, I think he will definitely end up staying where they are at the moment. Sorry, I think he'll end up coming to Manchester United. Ollie Phillips says, Mainu and Baleba could run our midfield for the next 10 years. 2 8s that can drive with the ball and press the opposition high. Well, I hope you're right with that statement. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that need to be convinced about Mainu, myself included, but I do agree that would be the dream. We're waiting to buy Baleba with our Sesko club card, says Sesko. Went quiet after Mbeumo. Bruno linked to Al Nazir, and then we suddenly pivot to Sesko and now Baleba. I think there's a pre-agreement next June, says Brendan Bennett. Well, I spoke about that last night. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if, because Bruno really did think through that Saudi deal for 2 weeks. I mean, I know people say he rejected them. It was a slow rejection. He definitely thought it through. And I just wonder if he's going to go there next summer. And if we know he's going there next summer, there's a big load of money coming into the club, isn't there? Which you could almost spend in anticipation, especially if the agreement is that it gets done in June in this financial year, technically. It's still not a perfect window, and I know we pay in instalments, but who here thought we would spend over 200 million before we sold a single player, says Slazy. But look, you know, we haven't sold anybody, but technically we have saved 15 million in wages for Rashford. Technically, we've saved about, God, what's 150 grand a week? 1.5 million. We saved about another 10 million in wages from Lindelof and Ederson, so that's 25 million saved. On top of that, we've sacked a load of people. So just with Rashford and Lindelof and Ederson going in the sackings, you've probably got the first instalment for Cunha and Mbemo. So yeah, if we think about instalments, we haven't sold anybody yet, but we probably are covering off quite well. And we are in debt, but for FFP purposes, we're probably not that bad. Martini says, do you want Agate or Mainu next to Baleba? Says it will be Bruno, mate. I was quite taken aback by that. It will definitely be Bruno. It'll be Bruno and Baleba. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I don't see Bruno Fernandes not being next to him. Beans on Toast says, a genuine question: how have United gone from being broke to splashing on Sesko and Baleba? Sacking the tea ladies surely isn't the reason for this. I think I sort of covered that there. Beans on Toast. When you're dealing in instalments, then a 15 million saving on Rashford's wage can be instalment 1 on Sesko. So these things do help. It's definitely robbing Peter to pay Paul. There'll be things that we're saving money on here that we can use towards that, but we'll be tight. We will be tight. And remember, we had to pay £90 million this year on instalments for players we already own. So Onana, Mount, Rasmus, you're only adding to that next year. And you know, was it £40 million we paid in debt interest as well? So there's still a lot of money coming out of the club. People don't want to talk about it at the moment, but there is. Knowing Brighton, they've already done that one from Phil Houseby. Hoping to get a Baleba or keeper in across the line after Sesko. If you told me we'd be here before the start of the season, I would have taken this, as Kieran. We finished the football world, convinced everyone we were broke, and we're halfway through buying an army, says Ghost 92. I mean, we're not there yet. I like and appreciate the confidence and positivity, but we're not quite there yet, you know. So J.K. Worthing is excited for the season. I choose, I don't want to use realism again, reality, pragmatism. Because we've been down this road so many times before. I mean, was it Van Gaal or Ten Hag lost his first 2 games? I think that the great thing about a transfer window that I like is that you don't play football. So you play fantasy football. You buy these players, you construct these 11s, and you start talking about winning the league. The season kicks off, you lose to Fulham and Arsenal, and everyone's hammering out. So I'm, you know, experienced enough to know that just because you buy good players doesn't mean you start playing good football. And we have got a very difficult start to the season. So if you consider we've got Chelsea, Man City and Arsenal in our first 5 games, if we lose 3 out of our first 5, it doesn't matter who we've bought. People won't be sitting there going, oh, we're having a madness. We're having a madness. So the reality is we've got very, very difficult starts to the season. And, you know, it's very, very unlikely that even if we get Sesko and Baleba, that they'll start against Arsenal. So, you know, are we going to win that game, lose that game, whatever? So, yeah, I'm not here to start predicting we're going to have a good season, because that's not probable. But what I am looking at is 5th. And if you finish 5th, you will lose some games, but hopefully you will win enough to get into 5th. And I think that's what we've got to look at. Paul Fisher says, would selling Bruno before the end of this financial year be viable to getting the Baleba deal over the line? Well, we've spoken about that. we're playing hypotheticals, but it could. Luke Henderson says, Gyökeres first 2 games for Arsenal, he's been rated 3.2. I think Amrim knew he'd struggle in the Premier League. Why would anyone want rid of Bruno? I'm confused. Luke. Luke, the Gyökeres thing is just people hating on Arsenal. I mean, I don't like Arsenal. I'd rather they won the league than Liverpool or Man City, to be honest. But I sort of pity Arsenal and Gyökeres in a sense, because it's very obvious that people want Arsenal and Gyökeres to fail. I think he's a brilliant striker, and I think he'll do really, really well. That's my opinion on it. So, yeah. Breaking: Newcastle put forward requests to EPL to remove United from their name and go by Tyneside Magpies. Proposal has been rejected by the league, says Dammy. The club said they sold 50,000 tickets for Saturday, would be an added attraction to make it a sellout, says Glenn C. I'm surprised it's not a sellout, actually. Last pre-season game, first game at Old Trafford. You've got David De Gea returning. But look, a lot of people on holiday and stuff, and, you know, it's not a proper game, I suppose. Ollie Phillips says, Mainu and Baleba done that one from Ollie. Right, I just want to go back to the news because there is some stuff I want to talk about. Specifically, the deal in relation to who was it? Oh, The Guardian. The Guardian. So look, I think a lot of people are talking about incomings at the moment, but as per David Ornstein's update, outgoings are just as important. Certainly, we do need outgoings so that we can fund these deals. I'm a firm believer that you should buy before you sell, because in that sense, you are opening yourself up to the ability to be proactive rather than waiting. And we saw that last year. I think it was a mistake to wait to bring De Ligt and Mazraoui in until after we got rid of Wan-Bissaka, and the same with Agate and McTominay. So I think that we should definitely be looking at buying players before we sell players, because that is fundamentally going to slow us down. And players will be going. And I think the 2 players I wanted to talk about this morning really was, well, there's an update from The Guardian saying that Chelsea are ready to now move in relation to Garnacho. Very much the forgotten man, really, because we're more interested in the players that we've got and the players that we're trying to bring in. And quite rightly, Amorim's brilliance in banning these players from the US tour and pre-season means that there are no photos of them. There are no clips of them. They get no airspace. When they're asked about in pre-season press conferences, Amorim can quite rightly say, my answer's the same as it was weeks ago. They're not training with us. So they basically had their oxygen starved. And I think previous managers, when you look at last season, Ten Hag didn't want Sancho. Sancho didn't want Ten Hag, and yet he was on the US tour and it was a problem. So I think that the way that it's been handled by the club and Amorim has been very, very good, because Garnacho is sort of a boring topic, isn't he? I mean, he's a talented player. He's not going to be a Man United player, but we know he wants to go to Chelsea, and we've known that for a long time. And we know that Chelsea want him, but they want him cheap. So it's become a dead story. So even when I read it in The Guardian that Chelsea are prepared to now start talks with Manchester United for Garnacho, you sort of go, well, fair play. You've ruined your you've ruined your pre-season. You haven't had one. And, you know, you're low priority for Chelsea as well, because they've gone and bought a load of other players before they bought you. So look, Garnacho and Chelsea probably will happen. They're trying to drive the price down. It'll be interesting to see what price we get. That's the only thing I'm interested in. There's talk of 50 million quid. Maybe it will be 50 million quid, but maybe 40. But the reality is Chelsea are in the Premier League. Chelsea have got money. And I think the biggest thing with this is going to be the add-ons and the sell-on clause. And I think if we get those, we'll be covered anyway. Jim says 50 million or no deal. I think that, look, if we got 45, I still think that's a good deal. If we get 40 plus good add-ons and sell-on, you'd probably take it. But I can see us getting more than that. And I just think, look, ultimately, he's a pure profit player. So if you get 40, if you get 50, it really helps us in relation to the other stuff we're trying to do. But on top of that, he's got a very big mountain to climb. There are certain Chelsea fans that don't want him. I think there are players at Chelsea that are better than him. I stand by the point that he's a talented player. We can't lose, really. If he goes to Chelsea for 45 million and he flops, we've done okay. If he goes to Chelsea for 45 million and he ends up being sold to Real Madrid and we've got a sell-on clause, we've done okay. So I think as long as we cover ourselves, the bottom line is, how do you lose when nobody actually wants to keep him anymore? Like in January, I was a very vocal person about keeping him. I felt we shouldn't be selling players who are 20 years of age, and we shouldn't be about that. But realistically, nobody wants to keep him now. So I think it's a win-win situation for Manchester United. And I've got to say again, the way that the club and Amorim have handled it is perfect. And I hope that this is going to be the stance in the future, because I get tired of the Carrington pictures of these players walking in with a smile and you're like, why are you here? And they've not been afforded that opportunity. And I'm not saying they're listening to the United stand or they're listening to United fans, but we were talking about this in June. We're only 2 weeks away from Rashford and Sancho and Garnacho walking in with their boots under their arms, smiling, getting photos, and they've just not been able to do it. They've had the oxygen cut, and I think that's why you get the interviews and the Instagram posts, because they're not used to that. They're not used to that. They've been pampered. They've been pampered. They've had the ability to use the Manchester United name, to use their socials to get stuff out there. And it's very, very clever, and it's long overdue. And I think Manchester United have finally grown a pair and actually started acting like a symbol of something. Like the club is bigger than the player. And obviously you've got to give credit to the board and Amorim for doing this, but ultimately it's not really the board and Amorim doing it. It is, but it's the club. It's the name. We're Manchester United. You're not gonna play us like a bloody fiddle anymore. We're bigger than you. It's Manchester United on tour. It's not the Garnacho show. It's not the Sancho show. It's Manchester United. And I think it's worked really, really well. With regards to what I was going to talk about next, Rasmus. Look, Rasmus's stance has always been that he wants to stay at Manchester United and fight for his place. And in many ways, I wish that was the case, because I think when you look at what we're trying to do in the midfield with Baleba, and when you look at what we've done at the number 10 position, I still don't know that I feel that Xerxes is a good striker backup to Sesko. And obviously, Obi's very young. So I want to finish fifth. So I think there's enough minutes for Sesko and Rasmus across the season, because it's very rare that your striker will play 90 minutes every week. In fact, it can be quite dangerous. I feel that financially United will be saying, look, there's a lot of interest in you and we can't give you game time, so we think it's best that you move on. And it feels like we're heading towards that. Personally, I would rather have two strikers that are out and out strikers. And I certainly think that as bad as Rasmus was last year, and you have to acknowledge it, he also would probably be a lot better in a team that's got Cunha and Mbeumo behind him, and a midfield that's got Baleba in it potentially, and a better Dorgu and Ahmad down the right-hand side. I think there's going to be a lot more. I mean, I think Sesko is walking into a situation that's, very, very exciting. So, but you've got to be realistic. I think there's enough noise around it now to suspect that, Rasmus could be on the move because of what's happening, and we do need to make money. The interesting thing about Rasmus is, though, Garnacho has to go, because that's 40-50 million pounds of pure profit that you can just go, that's instalment for Sesko, that's instalment maybe for Baleba, perfect. With Rasmus, you can't do that, because he still has a book value of around 30 to 40 million quid. So you save the wage, but you don't necessarily get the money in. So, it might not be that much money, if we're being completely honest. But look, I read the chat. There's a lot of people that really want Rasmus gone, and I understand that. But he's not going to start. Literally just had another update here coming in from Pete Hall in the iPaper. Another player outside the bomb squad who is now likely to leave is Rasmus. United could accept a bid as low as 30 million to allow him to leave. Yeah, I think we're heading towards the exit door with it. Xerxes seems to be valued within the squad and by Amorim, and I suppose logically I do understand it, because if you've got Cunha and Burmo, Mount as your 10s, and Ahmad can play there and Bruno can play there, Xerxes probably doesn't get that much game time. But if Xerxes is the understudy to Sesko, he gets more game time. So it's I can see why Rasmus is going from a Man United point of view. Don't know whether Xerxes really is a striker, but in a United side, I'll drop this here. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that next season people are saying drop Sesko for Xerxes. And I don't mean that means Sesko's a bad player. It just means that Xerxes might do quite well, and people will be like, maybe he should be up front. You just don't know how it's going to go. There's always someone was on about this yesterday. Who do you think is going to be the player that sort of blows up? And you never know with Xerxes. Like he's one of those players that I think he's either going to be sold next summer, or he's going to become a player that really becomes like a fan favourite. So it'd be very, very interesting. But I do expect Rasmus to go. I wouldn't do it personally, but I do expect him to go, because I think he's going to want games. And also, there's a lot of interest in him. It's not like some players that you'd love to go, like Onana. There's no interest at all. Like, there is interest in him, so I think we will move him on. Yeah, 100%. Okay, let me just have a quick catch up on your thoughts. When do you think we'll be going? We've got Ben Jacobs on the show at 2:00 today, and I want you to be on that chat at 2:00, giving Ben some credit, because he's had a bloody good week. He mentioned Sesko to Man United in the middle of June, and he mentioned Baleba to Manchester United over a week ago. So give Ben his flowers on the 2:00 show today. Lucy says, remember, this is Brighton we are talking about. They put Pedro up for 100 million. Chelsea paid 50 plus add-ons. Can be changed. Good point, Lucy. It's amazing what a good transfer window can do to the morale of the club and the fans. Suddenly, I'm excited for the new season. Let's go Sesko, says Sahil. Rather buy Hojlund, Afcon will take out Baleba, Onana, Ahmad, Mazraoui, says Seth. Trina says, I make Baleba that we wouldn't have gone in so publicly for Baleba without some indication that we're getting him. Completely agree. Man United made around 154 crosses in the Prem last season, with Bruno the highest crosser. This has to change if we're to progress massively. It's not enough, is it, Michael? Adrian's a new member. Thank you very much. 5 in the morning, US, can always count on you. Love that. Let us know where you're watching from. And Ashley says, finally, we do the smart things to try and sign Premier League proven players. Sir Alex did this most of the time, says Ashley. I mean, that's a great point as well, isn't it? It's another Premier League proven player in Baleba, which I think is margins. It's clever. I read that Cunha deal counts to last year as well, says Smoggy. Love the magic of opening day, says Sir J.K. Worthing. Thank you very much. Okay. Connor says, hope you're doing well. If we manage to get Baleba, does United have to win against Fulham, Burnley, Brentford and Sunderland to prevent riots if we lose against the Big Four? Well, we have to win against them anyway, mate. I'll tell you now, with our first 5 games of the season are Arsenal, Fulham, Burnley, Chelsea, Man City. We won't lose all our games to Man City, Chelsea and Man City. We'll win one of those games at least. We're back at 2. We might be back before. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe. I'll speak to you on the next one. Take care, everyone.